Namaste and good morning. I'm going to continue on with part 2 on the Frank Talk Depth and Experience and Outcome of this Path, in which I had a very frank talk with Liza, who has come down to visit from Canada. We spoke about her experiences, her direct experiences here, and spoke about some of what remains when everything deconstructs and falls away into what is termed enlightenment. And so at this point, I think that it's beneficial to read some excerpts from Zen and the Brain that was written by a neuroscientist who is also a Zen practitioner who has studied in depth as to what takes place along the way. What it is, what it's not, what it says in the Buddhist writings as well. So this is just to bring clarification as to what has been said here, if it holds water, if it doesn't. I am more than happy, and we'll be trying to get a hold of the gentleman that wrote Zen and the Brain, this neuroscientist, to go ahead and go forward and do some testing. So let's see what we have from Zen and the Brain as to what enlightenment is, what it's not, etc., etc. The shifts and things that take place and what one looks for within that. Does history provide a conceptual model for enlightenment? The early astronomers were stuck in a geocentric mental set. Earth had to be the center of all the action. Then the Copernican perspective came along and changed all of that. Sudden enlightenment works in a similar manner. It gets rid of the old, deluded, egocentric self. Once this old subjective self-referent perspective vanishes, the experient finally comprehends the way things really are. And that's what I've said. You know, things will deconstruct, okay, the old baggage, the old drama, that old persona, all of that falls away and is no more. Let's go on. The objective reality is a brand new paradigm. Does time dissolve in a different way in absorptions and Kensho? Absorption replaces time with now. So yes, when one is meditating and gets drawn into that in a nirvikalpa, one is unaware of the world. In that moment, all deconstructs, and there is simply that is. When one comes out of it, if they remain in a nirvikalpa sahaj samadhi, what remains is now. Let's go forward. Time feels suspended, as it does at moments when one's attention is suddenly amplified and intensely focused into a heightened foreground. Kensho dissolves time into eternity. In this timelessness, every time-related concept is cut off from its former roots in the psychic self. And indeed, this does take place. There is, one lives within almost what one could say a timeless realm. Time goes so quickly, just in a matter of seconds it seems that the day has gone because one is so absorbed in the now, there is no consciousness of, you know, this before or after whatever. All that remains is this moment. Let's go forward. Why is insight wisdom so far removed from the word thoughts of our ordinary language? Insight wisdom, or what I term that spontaneous consciousness, yields instant syncretic Syncretic comprehensibilities. These idea messages and impressions convey understanding, but this arrives with no words attached. It just appears in consciousness. This is what I'm trying to explain. There is no thought about something. It is spontaneous within consciousness. It appears. The mouth opens, the words come out, that's it. Okay, there is no chattering mind that takes place at that point. Let's go forward. The brain has many networks for wordless comprehension. They link all 4 of its lobes with related regions in the subcortex further below. Here, circuits operate with the most ancient of codes, and some will cross the deep midline brain more readily than others. The kinds of word language found in our dictionaries cannot cipher these codes. Okay? Again, this is what I have spoken of many times. Word language is dualistic in nature. All of it comes from that duality. When one is in non-duality, all of these word images are no more valid. They're not needed, okay? It's spontaneous. Those things flow from the mouth, yada, 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 but the consciousness is absorbed into that one. Okay, let's go forward. Keep eroding the I, me, mine by many years of advanced training, by everyday life practice and episodes of Kensho. Break free from every clinging vestige of word, thought, body scheme, and psychic self. Refine to the nth degree the elemental levels of awareness. Perhaps then, what will be left would be simply be, or what I term is. Be or is. It is what it is. It's the most elemental essence of being. So what was he saying here? Let's go back and look at it. That one has to get rid of the clinging vestiges of word thought, chattering mind, body scheme, attachment to form, and psychic self. Okay? Let's go forward. Is the sentient core and connections of the mature brain. There, the basic networks have never lacked for resources. They are merely accustomed to using subliminal codes and ancient language of atmospheres and impressions. Pre-Sanskrit encoding, the 8th state being, seems to go beyond the heights of both ordinary men, ration, and of effect. Perhaps it would be more accurate to refer to it as the peace of the depths instead of the peace of the summits. If so, then down there would be an emptiness comparable with the kind of total cessation which occurs at absolute zero. Okay, so let's look at this a little bit more in depth. What is termed the zero? Like I said, God cannot, and I had this talk with a maths person, a maths scientist that has written a paper that maybe 15 people in the planet would understand. He was very intrigued when I said God has to be the zero, God is not the one. Why is this? Because that zero, while empty in nature, it is also full, complete, whole. There is nothing lacking, not now, not ever. And that is what remains when one deconstructs into that whole, but it has no substance as an objective thing that one is going to view. One is not viewing subject and object at that point. One has dissolved, that consciousness dissolves into that what I call 0 point balance, and remains in that ever-present is, that life of being, that total 100% essence, which runs like a thread through all of life. Okay, let's go forward. Not surprisingly, some persons outside of Zen might be as apprehensive about it as they would be about a black hole. Too dangerous to get near to, too dense to penetrate, and too distant to be of practical consequence anyway. Merrill Wolfe reserved the term pure being for that special state of consciousness which had no subjective or objective element, aka what I term 0 point balance. Okay, let's go forward. You might think that when extinction went this far, there would remain no residual properties to which any witness could later attach words. Yet, he continued, it did then seem as though space were progressively consuming the whole personal and thinking entity in a wholeness completion. Let's listen to that again. Yet he continued, it did then seem as though space were progressively consuming the whole personal and thinking entity in a wholeness completion, such that everywhere there was pure being. Moreover, even when he had plumbed these deepest depths of darkness and silence, and even after all his self-consciousness was blown out, he was left with the impression there remained a still vaster beyond. This is what these things mean. It means to be blown out, awakened, blown out. Okay? Nirvana means blown out. Okay? Let's continue to go forward. So what does this leave us with? Is there any suitable way to represent the scope of the eighth state? Perhaps the metaphor of the next unnumbered page of paper will suffice, remembering all the while that this is a state and that the person will finally be led back to the everyday earthly ground of interbeing, grateful to see every dandelion blossoming on the lawn in the sunshine. The orthodox tradition of silence is a very old one. The Greek root mu, from which mystic is derived, means silent or mute, and thus unutterable by derivation. Okay. This is why one goes into the stillness, goes into the silence. The words, the thought of this dissolves. Okay, one is drawn into a nirvikalpa samadhi, in which the world deconstructs. The idea of persona deconstructs. What remains is that is. Then one comes out of that and comes back into consciousness. There may be at that point where mind comes in and comes out, duality comes in and comes out, but eventually, if one continues to do the work, there will remain a nirvikalpa sahaj samadhi, which is simply being in that ever-present is without the dynamic of the chattering mind and thought, which creates then dualistic mental spin. So let's continue forward in this and see what they have to say. Back in ancient China, Dao Sheng, 360 to 434, had said, use words to explain thoughts. But silence, once thoughts have been absorbed, those qualified to seek the truth will grasp the fish and discard the fishing net. In other words, there is no need to cling to the former things. When one has reached that place, the former things pass away. One doesn't need to keep trying to put that into motion. Okay? When one has been entered into that silence and that stillness, he asked, Jolicoeur asked me, do you practice? No, because one enters what is known meditation without meditating. One is ever in that. One is ever in that. You don't need the fishing net of the entrappings and the trappings and all of the drama. It falls away. One is the living reality of it at that point. So let's go forward and see what else they have to say. It is a natural hush, this netless silence that both expresses and envelopes the most sublime, that envelops the most sublime. It is a natural hush, this netless silence that both expresses and envelops the most sublime. Natural, not manufactured. Okay? No one else's words in advance can prepare the aspirant for those profound inner moments when every echo of ordinary discursive word thoughts drops off. Let's read that again. No one else's words in advance can prepare the aspirant for those profound inner moments when every echo of ordinary discursive thought drops off. Each Roshi learns from long experience that students who persist in practicing Zazen, or what's done on this path, that inner reflective attitude, that inner journey into the heart, will awaken in due course on their own schedule. Nobody can hand it to anybody. This is why there are no guarantees made. This is why, again, you have to do the work. You have to do the journey. Let's continue on. Hence, the gist of the old Zen saying, better an inch of practice than a foot of preaching. You're not going to get there no matter how much wonderful words about it you adopt. It has to be the living experience, and that only comes by continuing to remain absorbed in that inner dynamic, which wears away ego and wears away all of the rest of the dualistic drama. Let's go forward. And from the depths of his own understanding, Emerson would say, do not require a description of the countries toward which you sail. The description does not describe them to you, and tomorrow you arrive there and know them by inhabiting them. So again, the proof, what I call the proof is in the pudding. You can talk about it all you want. You can intellectualize it all you want, and it means nothing. But when you have the direct experience of it, that's it, ball game is over. It has to be the direct experience, and then there are no words that will suffice. One knows. So let's go forward. The parsimony of phrasing among the more advanced Zen practitioners reflects a basic neurophysiological fact. The impulse to chatter simply drops away. If you will notice, if you will take notice, if you will listen, you will find that this is an ongoing thing with the students here. One reaches a point where one doesn't want to engage in the gossip and the unending BS of nominal drama that takes place on a daily basis. This is a natural progression that takes place. Let's continue forward. When experiencing the world becomes the operating mode, it replaces talking about it inconsequentially. When the mind that was in darkness becomes enlightened, it passes away. Let's listen to that again. When the mind that was in darkness becomes enlightened, it passes away. And with its passing, the thing which we call enlightenment passes also. Enlightenment exists solely because of the delusion and ignorance. If they disappear, so will enlightenment, the teaching of the Buddha. So what does this mean? People want to attach such a big premium on enlightenment. When things deconstruct, that which is termed enlightenment is going into the natural self. This is why I say, what I am, you are. It's not a higher state. One is coming to the natural way of being. That's it. That's all. I've said this over and over and over again. Let's continue forward with this. The Zen way is self-negating. Its bonfires consume more than the old varieties and vanities. Ultimately, they turn to ashes the whole concept of enlightenment itself. No beginner can believe this, not until much later come to realizations. Number one, only when a brain is still deluded will it need to transcend its current less than perfect condition. Number two, the brain becomes fully awakened to the suchness of the world when it is totally, continually, and directly in touch with what is going on in the present moment. Indeed, after the Buddha's great awakening, he was said to have remained at every moment thereafter, both coming and going, in the stage of permanent ongoing suchness. What is permanent ongoing suchness? You are ensconced, you remain in is, in the present moment, in the flow of that, spontaneously. That is what remains. Okay. He was the Tathagata. A Tathagata is a completely enlightened person who remains fully at home in the natural, ongoing flow of reality itself. To think of someone in this advanced stage as being already there would be to miss Zen by a mile, because there is no there. There denotes something outside, something in a different area. An object, subject, object. There is no longer any subject, object. There is only here. Okay, only that is. Only that 0 point balance. Okay, let's go forward here. Already here is the true meaning. For in this here and now, all distinctions will have vanished between ordinary life and Satori. Sacred and profane will have become one. There is no longer that divisionary. Life is what it is. Life. Okay. Why? Not because they are merely thought to be the same at the level of intellectual knowledge, and not because legend or doctrine says so, but because they are directly, let's listen to this, directly experienced as one and the same, and they have always been in fact. This is the reality online. One comes back into life. One has entered moksha. One has entered the play of God. One has gone beyond the karma-inducing and karma-creating and karma-generating drama. There is no thought. There is that spontaneous flow of is and the spontaneous flow of life. Before enlightenment, one chops wood and carries water. After enlightenment, one comes back, chops wood and carries water. All of the meditating, the sitting, the drama that went in between is no longer needed. Why? Because one is always what in the state naturally that people hope to enter by sitting in meditation. Okay, so let's continue to go forward with this. Not some hazy or artificial or make-believe virtual reality. So there is a practical litmus test for complete enlightenment. It is the full, tacit understanding that enlightenment itself is really nothing special. Okay? Nothing special. One comes to that point of being. What I am, you are. There is no difference except for one is awake and one is still not awake. That's all. Let's continue forward. And whosoever still views his or her enlightenment experiences as special states is retaining at least one or more layer of attachments. Okay. There is no special state because everything deconstructs, and what remains is this present moment as it is. Minus the thought, minus the baggage, minus the illusion, minus the delusion. What remains is life. Moksha. That living presence. Okay. Let's continue forward. How did Dogen recognize when an adult had returned, as it were, to this degree of original freedom? He saw that the enlightened person was able to navigate even-handedly between good and bad alike. Therefore, at this stage, the awakened person interacts with utmost flexibility among all such opposites. It is a stage that does not ignore right or wrong, does not ignore it. It will not pretend they don't exist, nor does it hold itself beyond any of the world's other contrasting dualities. Are you getting this? One doesn't lay down and become a doormat. One doesn't sit there and act as if, oh, it's not there, it doesn't exist. One fully engages. Let me read this one more time. It is a stage that does not ignore right or wrong. It will not pretend they don't exist, nor does it hold itself beyond any of the world's other contrasting dualities. Saketa observes that the enlightened person enters into a playful, permissive, vigorous, liberated interrelationship with the world. Let's listen to this again. Saketa observes that the enlightened person enters into a playful, permissive, vigorous, liberated interrelationship with the world. At this point, one becomes almost like a child. There's no holding back, there's no guile, there's no, one is extremely open. One speaks what it is and what it's not. One gives people the benefit of the doubt. One is not, looking for hidden agendas. Okay? One is very open and open to life. One enjoys what is there as it's there, intensely. Let's continue to look at this. This continues on the plane of the normal activity of consciousness, working, talking, even riding in a jolting bus. Okay, normal activity of consciousness. working, talking, riding in a jolting bus. They're not sitting there on a mountaintop oming or contemplating their navel. In previous years, when the meditator had briefly entered into the other separate moments of absorption, these few seconds had been otherworldly episodes which left ordinary consciousness far behind. Okay? Minimal. Okay? So, you know, when you get so in awe, like the Jocolier got so in awe of a guy that doesn't breathe and sits in this state for a number of hours, well, when he comes back, what's there to be in awe of? The brain starts going again, and he's back in the mix. He's back in the drama. Really? You're so enamored of that? Because you don't understand what remains in genuine realization versus what is a transient attainment. A city. Let's continue forward with this. One option included acute transient states and quickenings. The other option included ordinary everyday life. But now this is not so. One stage of freedom prevails. What is implied when a sage reaches this advanced stage of ongoing enlightenment? What remains? In a figurative sense, the brain's magnetic pole has shifted. New attitudes have fallen into place. Okay, realigned along with an entire new range of compass values. In the following pages, we review a few descriptions of this transformation as they have appeared in the Buddhist literature over the centuries. We then raise the question of its ethical base and speculate about how such a brain could have changed physiologically. So here comes the last part that I'm going to read. Do powerful emotions still intrude? People say, but I see you get angry, but you have this, but you have that, so you can't be enlightened. It can't be that. So let's see what's said here. Let's check it out. What is the fact and what is your fantasy about it? Do powerful emotions still intrude? Certainly. Certainly. But now they penetrate a stable person who dwells in a spirit of equanimity. As a result, anger or desire exert an impact for a moment, not an hour. How long? A moment. Or if for an hour, then not for a whole day. So are there emotions? Yes. Pure. The emotional content is no longer being filtered through a bunch of drama of mind. It's like a pebble that you throw in a still pond. It creates waves. But once that activity is over, the waves are gone, and one goes back into that quiet. Momentary is what it is. One lives life from the fullest. One engages life. One has gone full circle. So for you, for my students, I hope this has helped you to understand a little more. And for those pseudo-intellectuals, pseudo-psychotherapists, self-proclaimed, pseudo-hypnotherapist MA, which that title does not exist. There is no MA in hypnotherapist, who seems to think he can come and spend a second and know everything there is to know about here, and wants to call here delusional, charlatan. You don't know the first thing about genuine, what is enlightenment, what is not, about genuine states and the depth that it takes to walk a path. You've scratched the surface and you have a bunch of ideas because you're a vegetarian. You got your hang-ups about celibacy. And you're riding those to the nth degree. And creating so much karma for yourself by bearing false witness about what's here and what's not. Bearing false witness means basically that you're lying about what's been said here and what's not. You've never been here. You don't know what I say. So you can't sit there and make these proclamations that I said this and I said that, and you have no idea what's been said here ever. Neither have you taken the time to find out what my students experience and what they don't. What is their direct experience? Not about what they've read, not about what they've heard. Okay, there are no dogmas on this path. There is no belief system on this path. This path is about doing the inner work residing in the heart and continuing to watch and to let these things deconstruct, to continue to go deeper, to look deeper within Gyan, so that one sees for themselves, one has the experience by themselves as to what it is and what it's not. So again, we will leave this here. I have given all that I can give as to what it is and what it's not. So I hope this has helped. I hope the students have enjoyed it. And we will leave this here. Namaste.